Welcome back to the Catholic Drive Time Show. This is your host, Adrian Fonseca. It's so good to be on with you today. Praise be to God. Today is Wednesday, September 13th, and it is the beginning of our share-a-thon. Yesterday was the official beginning, but we're still at the top of the week. And it goes on for 2 more days, and right now we are asking for your pledge of support coming up at the 7 o'clock hour, 7 a.m. Central. And we're going to be starting to take calls for you to be able to call in and donate to be able to keep Catholic radio waves flowing in your neck of the woods. So if you would join us in that, we'd be very grateful. We're going to be back on air at 9 a.m. Central. So 7 o'clock hour, we will not be having our Fear and Trembling game show, as is our custom. But instead, we're going to be preempting that hour to the 9 o'clock hour. And then we will be going straight into our share-a-thon. So be generous. We'd be very grateful to you if you would be generous with us. And thank you very much in advance. Now, there is a story here. Detransition teen Chloe Cole censored by Instagram. Now, this is interesting because this woman has had a very, very sad situation that she was placed in, that she was forced into. She's 19 years old and she was medically transitioned as a minor. And now she's being censored by Instagram over the weekend. Now, before we go forward, it's kind of important to know who this woman is. She put in her bio that she's a female with 2 X chromosomes and a, quote, former trans kid. And it also says in her biography that she started on testosterone and puberty blockers at the age of 13. She underwent a double mastectomy at the age of 15 and finally detransitioned at the age of 16. So for 3 years, she was tortured by society, by the doctors, by the medical establishment, by the experts. And Chloe Cole is being censored. She doesn't know exactly why specifically. They didn't tell her the reason that they're giving. They just kind of did it. They said that her account will not be shown to non-followers. The account may not show up in the suggested feeds, on the reels, on feed recommendations, in searches. You won't find her. Now, why might this be? They said that your account activity, quote, may not follow our recommendation guidelines, end quote. So what guidelines might she be not following? Well, her content is not anything vulgar. It's not anything inappropriate. So the only reason why people can think of why this might be happening is because she's talking about the trans issue and she's against it. She's saying this is bad and that we have to stop ruining children's childhoods. And they consider that medical misinformation. To say that a man is a man and a woman is a woman in the 21st century is considered medical misinformation. Now, Cole, praise be to God, is suing Kaiser Permanente healthcare system, which is those who did her transgender treatment. She said that the doctors are humans too, and sometimes they are wrong. She said this before Congress. She said, quote, my childhood was ruined, along with thousands of detransitioners that I know through our network. This needs to stop. You alone can stop it. Enough children have already been victimized by this barbaric pseudoscience. Please let me be your final warning. Now, so far, we've only seen the opposite. I mean, California just overturned the bill trying to say that at the very least, they got to let the parents know if your kids are trying to transition. So we're not even heading in the right direction at all in this situation. It's very concerning. And the other thing that's concerning is the question of medical misinformation. Who gets to decide what is medical misinformation or not? For instance, there's some things that are obvious because I'm not actually for unfettered freedom of speech. I don't think people should be allowed to say whatever they want. For example, if someone was to post a video saying, hey kids, you should drink bleach, I think that should be banned. You should not be allowed to say that. Why? Because you're going to kill somebody. Because kids who are not smart, who are not developed yet, they don't know what bleach is. They don't know what's going to happen if they even have bleach on their contact with their skin. So obviously that has to be banned. But when it comes to things that are more debated among experts, debated among the medical community, that's not just common sense, you should allow people to be able to speak their mind, to tell the truth. And in that sense, I do support freedom of speech. And then there's this situation, which is the exact perversion of reality. Because, for instance, in the situation with like the COVID vaccines, if you want to have experts on both sides giving arguments, I say allow them both to give out their arguments and people can make their own decisions. But the transgender issue is the exact opposite. It is absurd to allow that kind of thing. It is equivalent to people posting videos on how to be better at being anorexic, on promoting anorexia among women. That is the equivalent to if people were encouraging suicide on social media. That is the equivalent. And then they're saying to discourage those things is actually the medical misinformation. Utter absurdity is what it is. Now, this woman, Chloe Cole, I'm glad that she is returning back to her previous state as much as she physically can, considering how permanent the damage is to her. And there are so many people like that, and we don't hear their stories. Why? Why does it seem like every single person who is quote-unquote trans is happy? They're all enjoying their transition. Nothing bad's happening. Everything's hunky-dory. Why does it seem that way? Because anyone who comes out to tell the truth gets censored. Anyone who comes out and shows the barbaric nature of these actions are censored. And someone had brought up this YouTuber. What is his name? His name was something along the lines of, forgetting his name. It's probably better I don't mention his name anyway, so you don't look it up. But there's this YouTuber who is, he's basically a glutton. And he eats just copious amounts of food on YouTube, just constantly. And they call it a mukbang. I don't know what that means. Hopefully it's not something bad.
I think it's a Korean video trend where people eat with you, or I think they just kind of stream themselves eating food, and people join them and watch them eat food.
Okay, so he
very
calls it a
strange.
mukbang, but instead of like eating with you, he just has like piles and piles of food, like probably several pounds of food, and he just stuffs his face with it. And the dude is really interesting, actually, because he used to be a vegan, and that was like his stick, and or shtick, I guess is the actual term. And he gained like hundreds of pounds, where the guy is like on an oxygen tank, and he can barely move around now. And what is going on here? He's killing himself on air. He's literally making videos of him killing himself slowly. And there we allow that. But if you talk about transgenderism, you're going to get banned. They're going to say that's medical misinformation. Oh, you're leading to people's deaths they'll accuse you of. That's what they accuse you of. Obviously, it's not true, but that's what they accuse you of. But if you try to gorge yourself to death, because the guy is going to die. The guy is going to die of like a heart attack or of ruptured organs or just any number of complications that happen when you're that obese. And yet that's allowed? And that's also encouraged? The guy has millions of views. And that's encouraged? His audience is like children. That's the majority of his audience. And he's promoting the most unhealthy lifestyle that's going to ruin kids' lives. And they're showing, hey, if you do this, you too can make a ton of money. Utter absurdity.
Adrian, you may be too young for this, but I remember when I was a kid, they made it a point to get rid of these nicotine ads in magazines, television, all kinds of places. You couldn't see Joe Cool anymore. You couldn't see the Camel brand cigarettes. You know, you couldn't see any of that stuff, and it was always because, well, it's gonna be hurting the kids. It's gonna be hurting the kids. And now we're seeing the complete opposite, where they say cigarettes are gonna kill you. Cigarettes are gonna do this. Well, now they're encouraging kids to go out and they're not fully developed yet in their way of thinking, but encouraging them to go into these transition surgeries that, like Chloe Cole had, will ruin their life. I mean, the statistic is somewhere in the near 40% of these people who have this trans ideology, or who buy into the trans ideology, who follow through and change their genders, which you can't really do, by the way.
Right.
But who follow through with this, they overwhelmingly want to commit suicide. And it used to be that we would encourage kids not to participate in things that would kill them, but now it's the complete opposite.
You know, it's funny because, and not funny in a ha-ha way, but funny in a sad way. It's funny because it used to be like a joke where people are like, won't anybody think of the children? And it's like the whole situation of, every politician's always just trying to, wouldn't you think of the children? We have to do this for the kids. But like you said, now it's like nobody even cares about kids. In fact, it's pretty popular to be anti-children.
Right.
To just be like, don't bring your kids around. We don't want your kids. Kids are bad. Anti-natalist. I'm never having kids. The exact opposite of what human beings are for. You mentioned the other day when we were talking about marriage that the primary end of marriage is the procreation, the propagation of the human race. Mm-hmm. And
that's not my take, by the way. That's the church's take.
Right. Exactly. That's the
Just
church.
In case people want to go after me.
Exactly.
That's actually the church's take on marriage.
For sure. And this is, and it's also just, and that's what I was going to say, it's also just natural.
Right.
Like it's according to natural law that we promulgate the human race. And somehow our modern world goes even against that and says, let's murder our babies. Let's contracept any possibility of children. Let's mutilate our children. Let's do everything bad to kids. Like, let's go back to when everybody was saying, won't anybody think of the children? Because that's really truly the case, that nobody cares. Nobody cares about kids. In fact, kids are just denigrated. Like, if you have children, you're going to be mocked. You're considered crazy if you want to have kids. Why would you do that? Why would you make your life so difficult? People will say. Don't you know how easy life is if you don't have kids? It's a very sad reality. Now, it is still good, though, that we're seeing more detransitioners stand up, be bold, because it takes a lot of bravery to do that, because your entire community comes after you and denigrates you. So let's pray for Chloe Cole. One, that she become Catholic and save her soul. And two, that more detransitioners come out and speak out publicly and courageously to show the error of this evil action that I think will be remembered in the history books as one of the most barbaric things that we've ever done as an American people. We'll be right back talking about defund the police.